this is my senior thesis. No, I'm kidding. So one of the roles that we get involved with in crisis negotiation is both as negotiators and psychologists is there will sometimes be data that is provided. This is a press release from Roland Stewart, a.k.a. the Rainbow Man. You remember the guy that used to show up at all the sporting events with the John 3:16 shirt? He would ultimately become a call-up at the Airport Hyatt Hotel at LAX. And he believed the end of the world was coming, you know, in his lifetime. And he believed that it was going to be around the Feast of Trumpets in September. And what he wanted to do was take hostages so that he could demand a 90-minute press conference to talk about biblical prophecy and the end of the world. He was a violent true believer, an extremist. He was also bipolar, smoking a lot of weed. He came there with a 3-day supply of marijuana, a handgun, some stink bombs, and he had taken 2 people hostage who managed to lock themselves in the bathroom of this hotel room. He had walked to or gotten dropped off the place, dropped a stack of these things off at the base of the hotel, and then headed up there taking hostages at a place that had a good vantage point so he could shoot at the airport and hopefully shut down air traffic. And then he had these things down below and says, that tells you guys what my position is. I got to the scene. They flew me out there because I'd still be sitting in traffic if they hadn't taken me by helicopter from Chinatown to LAX. It was that bad. I get to the airport, and they're starting to talk to him. A guy named Randy Simmons, one of LAPD's heroes who lost his life in line of duty in an incident a few years ago. But Randy was negotiating with him and trying to talk religion with him. And they were talking, and it was kind of stuck. But nobody had read this yet. And so I start reading it. I go, this is a press release. So I start reading through it, and there's all this biblical prophecy in it. He's citing Revelations, which is not ever a good thing. And then he talks about all these predictions. And he says, after the rapture, if we go to, there's no pointer here, but after the rapture, Juan Carlos of Spain signs a 7-year peace with Israel, leads the European common market in one world government with Roman Catholics as a false prophet, along with the world conglomeration of churches, chop the head off if you don't take the mark 666. Okay, you hear the religiosity, you hear there's delusions, but there's also true beliefs that you know, extreme religious believers will also hold that are conspiratorial in nature. So what gets relevant to me is down at the bottom here, where it says, Amen. Okay, because I'm reading through this thing, and it says, Amen. So Jesus chose me to alert you my actions are justified, Fifth Amendment, time of war, defensive necessity, a crime to prevent a greater harm. Dr. Taylor, blah, 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 and my wife have a 90-minute tape recorded. I want all media worldwide to transcribe that tape and this press release, including the printing of all scriptures used above. That being done, I will come out and talk it over. If not done, I will continue. So that's an important, this guy is a deliberate hostage taker. He came here knowing what he was going to do, prepared. He brought a radio with him so he could monitor the frequencies. He brought a 3-day supply of marijuana, which he used in about 3 hours. His 3-day supply of marijuana, 3 hours he smoked all his weed, which is bingo fantastic for us. But what I took from this, part of my job is to assess. And what do I assess? I said, well, okay, so he's a true believer. This is what he believes. You are not going to argue him out of his religious position. He is here, and he believes that's what he's going to get is a 90-minute press conference. Now, nobody's getting a 90-minute press conference anywhere in the world ever. 3 minutes, maybe. Okay? So he's not realistic. Okay? So my assessment was he will talk, he will share his ideas, let him keep talking. And meanwhile, you need to be thinking about how you're going to resolve this without him walking out. He's not walking out. Okay? And so what they did, 9 hours of talking. And in that, we used other techniques with him. Now or in a little while, you might find yourself getting tired. I know what you guys are trying to do to me. So we use suggestibility, stuff that we borrow from hypnosis to manipulate him. Even though he knows what we're doing, it has its effect. Plus he's smoking weed. And he's laying on the bed in the hotel room. And what are we doing? We're keeping him busy. Because meanwhile, the bomb squad and the SWAT team are practicing in another part of the hotel, blowing doors off of rooms, using the helicopter flying over as cover for the sound of the explosions, because they're piloting what we're going to do at showtime. And at showtime, we're talking to him, and I'm there in the room talking with the negotiators, talking to him, keeping him busy, and trying to bring him way down emotionally, wipe him out. Just put that gun down, man. You don't need it. And so they go in the middle of our call. We know it's going to happen. They blow the freaking doors off the hotel door, because he had to have it fortified. And as he described it later in an interview, he said, I was just laying on the bed with my hands behind my head, you know, stoned, kind of sleepy, and I see the wall just go by. And so he says, hey, man, you didn't have to go to all that trouble to come in here. And they took him, and they released the hostage, and they took him in. But he was never going to come out. But that's the Rainbow Man incident from back in the 90s. 4 other case examples I'll talk about. Time, I think I got plenty of time. I'm going to talk about A Good Day to Die, jumpers, doctors. I want doctors, and I'll close up with the O.J. Simpson case. The West Valley incident is another tactically resolved incident that's in my book. I'm not here to sell my book, but if you choose to go get it, it's here. It's available. I'll sign it for you in the meet and greet afterwards. I talk about this incident there. It's probably one of the most, can I use a term from California, the most gnarly incidents I've ever responded to. Suspect Tan Quat, a.k.a. you can call me Gene Morgan, is a Vietnamese male. Took his 3-year-old daughter hostage, Janet, during an attempt to kill the family. So he is a drug addict, and he's kind of a bad actor. He's had some interesting family history. He's high on crack. He's coming down. He's got a handgun. He came to the house to kill his wife, his sister-in-law, his daughter, and his other child, and then kill himself. He'd been in and out of some treatment facilities. The family had rejected him, and they had the final rejection based upon some stuff he'd done in the family. And he was just basically going to end it. So he called his doctor, Julius Griffith, his workers' comp doctor, who had turned him down for his workers' comp claim because he said, you've got problems, but they're not from the job. And called the doctor, said, today's a good day to die. And the doctor called the police, and meanwhile we're getting a call from shots fired at the residence because the family managed to escape except for Janet, 3-year-old. And they're in this apartment complex on the 2nd floor in the West Valley of Los Angeles. So, all right, let me go back. So we get there, and we commandeer an apartment a couple doors down. It's like one of these square apartments, you know, kind of like you got apartments here, here, and then down here across the way, and the roofs on both sides. 2nd floor, there's a big tree in front of his apartment. And what's going to happen is we're going to start talking to him. We get 2 Vietnamese male police officers who we're going to use as negotiators. They're not trained yet. They're in the next class, of course. And why do we have 2? If they're going to end up talking in Vietnamese, we need one to talk to them in Vietnamese and the second one to translate. And yeah, so Mike Albanese, who was the SWAT negotiation supervisor, he does a quick training session with these guys. He brings them in, and he says, you guys are going to negotiate with him. You're going to do everything we tell you to do, and don't fuck it up. That was the training. And these guys were wonderful. They were like, like you could just see them, oh my God, lives are in the balance. Because this guy is talking on his handheld phone in gruesome detail about how when he finally gets the resolve, he's going to shoot his daughter so that their blood can commingle when he takes his own life. And it's this kind of dialogue that he's talking to the negotiator and saying, you know, bring me 500 of your best officers, and we're going to take this out. We're going to do this now. Bring me your FBI, your CIA, you know, bring them all, and we're going to have a big shootout. And then he'd put the phone down on speaker, and then we could hear the dialogue he was having with his daughter. He was, you know, he's like talking to her about, you know, how he's going to take her life and all this kind of stuff. And whatever. It was chilling dialogue, to say the least, by a man towards his own daughter. So negotiation goes on for a while, and Long Nguyen, the primary negotiator, I'm telling him, you really need to, talk to him as if you're his brother in law enforcement. And he would talk to him in Vietnamese, and then the suspect, Gene Morgan, would talk back in English, which is kind of common in many Asian and Vietnamese households, especially that I've seen in Southern California. And it was very comfortable. And they had a rapport, but he never wavered from murder-suicide. And part of the problem that I learned, because I got a hold of Dr. Julius Griffith, and the report that he'd done had revealed that Tan Quat had been in a Vietnamese prison camp. So anything that felt like confinement was traumatic for him and unacceptable. So jail was not going to be acceptable to him. He had checked out of 2 treatment facilities because they felt like the prison camp that he was in. There was just too much there. So his homicidal, suicidal impulses were very strong. And he was coming down on crack, so he was getting more depressed. And jail was not an option, nor was treatment. So we really had little to work with, and then he got hungry. He wanted to have a last meal. And what did he want? He wanted Burger King, not McDonald's. And why did he want Burger King? He wanted to have it his way. So in any event, so Gene Morgan, we'll get you Burger King, not McDonald's. Now here's the whole food thing. We're buying time to get the food. We got a sniper set up on the roof across from the apartment 203 on the south side. Sniper set up, he's got like a hide, which is what conceals his presence. He's got his gun set up on a bucket. And every time that Quat would come out in the front of the apartment, he would have his daughter like this with the gun in her face. It was freaking awful. And then a couple times he was blasting some rounds. In fact, the media showed up, and we were telling him, hey, why don't you guys go away? Move back. You're like kind of in the line of fire. Screw you guys. You're always telling us to get back. Tan Quat comes out, busts a couple rounds, and we had full cooperation from the media at that point. So he's got the gun held to her, and so the thought was that he'd come out a couple times. He wanted cigarettes, so we were able to see how he came out for the cigarettes. We delivered the cigarettes, to the front. He'd come out. He'd lean down like this, and so the thought was, okay, when the food gets here. Because the assessment was, I got brought into a room with the brass, and they're saying, this is a serious thing, Doc. What do you think? Is he negotiable? I said, no. You're going to have one of 2 outcomes. You're going to have 1 dead body or 2. And he is not negotiable, and this is just a matter of time to have murder-suicide. And so they're going to deliver the food, and the idea is when the food gets there and he reaches down for it, whether he has his daughter or not, they're going to take a round, put it in his forehead. So Mike Albanese orders up the food. It goes from one person to the next and ends up at a guy at the corner of walk and don't walk, some police officer who doesn't know what this food is for. And he's thinking, screw SWAT. Why am I fetching their food for him? He doesn't know how important it is. So where does he go? McDonald's. So he brings the food back. And why does he go to McDonald's? Probably because they gave comp for cops, right? So he comes back and he's got freaking McDonald's. We got to talk Quat through this. And we do. And we're very sorry. We can go get, no, just bring it. And I want to get this over with. So they deliver the food. He comes out, daughter like this. We've got an open line. We talk him through it. And he comes out. And in exactly the same moment that the round goes off from the sniper, he turned his head and it pierced his ear. So it did not hit him where it needed to hit him, and we're waiting. We hear the round go off. We're like, okay, is it code 4? Is it resolved? Longest pause in the world. And next thing we hear is the door open. What the freaking door? Why is it opening? And we hear him say, you see that? They just shot me. We're like, why is he even talking? It's like, ugh. Plan B, 2 officers on each side. They come in. That's the dynamic entry. They make entry. He retreats to the bathroom in the bathtub, and he's using his daughter as a human shield as he's laying in the bathtub, screaming, I kill baby, I kill baby. Not by her first name, I'm going to kill my daughter, not I'm going to kill Janet, I kill baby, objectifying his daughter. There was some real great tactical negotiation that went on in that bathroom. Bob, I won't use his last name, has an MP5 with a laser sight, and he says, "Don't you fucking kill her." And that was his negotiation, and it was just enough talking that Tan turned his head, and then he was able to put a round in his eye socket. And Janet did not hit the ground. Somebody had already gone in there, scooped her up. She's out of there like a hot potato. She's safe, and suspect, sadly, is deceased. But the family thanked us afterwards, and that is an example of the blending of verbal and physical tactics. It was a horrific day, but it was, we don't always get ideal outcome A versus less ideal. This was the lesser of two evils. It would have been better if both people came out safe, but it was resolved like that.